Part 2.
But I guess we can move on now. And this movie and one other, I think you're going to have to fill me in on. Actually, no, I think we're going to have to skip it. Neither of us saw it. I feel like this, critically and fan-wise, seems to be like the nadir of the franchise, which is X-Men Origins Wolverine. I watched like the first 10 minutes, a little bit more of it, and I can't speak for on a rating level as a whole, but I will say the approach this new director took felt way too over the top, I thought.
It was very off-putting.
Yeah. Like the opening credits montage, this weird slow-mo spinning around thing, I feel like that would work if it was like a new franchise or one-off movie. It does not suit the more serious tone that came before it. Not to mention, I know there are multiple instances of Wolverine looking up at the sky and screaming, "No!" including the first 5 minutes where, as a kid, first time, he uses his powers, kills his birth dad after he kills his adopted dad, and looks up. You have like kid Wolverine Victorian clothes looking up going, "No!" And I think that happens again, like when his girlfriend died and stuff. Like the Oh, I know another part I've seen that people cited. Because actually, I did want to bring up. Last Stand has some surprisingly poor CG at points with the environmental stuff. When Wolverine first gets, because you find out, he was born with more of a bones jutting out, and then surgically had the adamantium stuff done to him. There's a scene where he's looking at the adamantium claws in the mirror for the first time, and they do not look good. Like, there's so little texture to these CG claws, and it's right. It takes you out of this what's supposed to be an impactful scene. So you've seen all of Wolverine Origins, right?
Yes.
What would you say about it as a whole?
I just could have done without it, really. It didn't really do much for me as a prequel.
Also, you said you weren't fond of Wolverine.
Could care less about Wolverine, so there's that. However, if you're going to do a prequel, it needs to actually hold weight to what's actually currently happening.
To what you already know.
And everything what we got from Wolverine, it didn't really, one way or the other, at the outcome of the movie.
Uh-huh.
The only thing that we really got was the introduction of Deadpool.
And they really, really screwed that up.
Good. Like, the Deadpool movie did a better explanation of Deadpool than Wolverine's origin.
Oh, absolutely, because this pretty much missed the point in almost every way. I remember hearing people say the best way you could sum up how they handled him was you took the merc with the mouth and ultimately removed his mouth.
Yeah.
He never wore anything like that outfit. Now, I have seen the actual Deadpool movie, and is Deadpool in the comics, is he originally a mutant himself? Because in the movie, they do like experiments to basically force mutanthood on him.
I
don't know.
I almost want to say that part is accurate. However, I cannot confirm or deny.
I get that.
If he is like another Weapon X, I do believe, maybe sometimes on Tuesday.
Maybe sometimes, just on Tuesday. Also, I did find it distracting that because I watched the first 10 minutes of this, and among the ragtag team of mutants he's with is Will.I.am.
That was very weird.
That was very weird, even though he was wearing a cowboy hat to hide his trademark hair.
I don't really, but you still know it's Will.I.am.
Yeah. And that's more than a little distracting.
Yeah, and so we got, going back again, we got from X1.
Yeah.
Let's go back into Wolverine's past, and for some reason there's Blob. Blob are kind of supposed to be best friends, supposedly.
In the comics or in the movie?
Yeah, like they're kind of always together in the comics. And so to put Blob in Toad's past was very strange.
That does not sound like what most people will want. Like, yeah, I feel like even more than X3, people did not like the character alterations. Especially Deadpool. They probably shouldn't even have bothered with him if it's this far disconnected.
Why he was there, because he is another, in theory, Weapon X person.
I mean, he's always technically been an X-Men spinoff, right?
Actually, nope, I lied.
Oh,
I can't as Deadpool's backstory. However, he is actually a Spider-Man spinoff.
really? I wonder how that works.
That's why people ship Deadpool and Spider-Man together.
I think they did a comic miniseries lately of those two working together.
Meant to be in, from what I understand, in the same, like, they're supposed to be together. Not together, but they're they're
Partners in crime or crime fighting.
right.
That does surprise me because they have pretty different ideals and morals, from what I'm aware.
Right. But yeah, so Deadpool was supposed to, because their costumes are also somewhat sort of kind of similar.
Yes, they are. Red and white eyes.
Deadpool is actually more of a spinoff of the character of Spider-Man, but I do believe Deadpool's backstory is mutant related.
Yeah, everything I'm aware of Deadpool, he seems more closely tied to X-Men than any other Marvel thing, and that's probably why Fox had the rights to him. But we don't have to dwell on Wolverine for too long, but is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, it was just really off-putting. The only thing that really tied it to me in with the rest of the X-Men franchise was the fact that William Stryker was a part of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, finally clarified how he was involved with the Adamantium backstory, because X2 set some of that up. Also, I know people weren't happy with what a small role Gambit had, because he's a very popular character that people have been wanting for a while.
And which, again, I still don't understand why Gambit is popular.
I don't know that much about him, so I can't say, but I know they're still toying with the idea of his own spinoff.
Could also care less about that.
I'd be fine with them just integrating him into the main crew, because that's what I understand they did in the cartoons.
I want a Storm movie. That's all I want.
Yeah, that could still happen. Halle Berry's young enough. But anyway, so let me just pull up what the next one was in release order. I need to stop closing my Chrome window. All right, so next we get to one of my favorites, and I think the first one I saw, which is First Class.
This was, for me, I was a little leery.
Yeah.
This
a lot
was
of people
the point
probably
where
were.
they said that they were going to revamp the story and
Do a prequel series.
they're still going to, yeah. So I was a little leery as to what was going to happen.
And how did you feel about the final product?
I felt less leery. I liked it. I did have my issues.
Mm-hmm. This is one of my favorites. I feel like this one just clicked with me a lot more than most. I know there's still at least one character mishandling people would talk about, but I think it's also cool that you get to see different actors doing takes on some of the established characters, because I actually do quite like McAvoy and Fassbender as the younger Charles and Eric.
I love them a lot.
Yeah, I think they knew that it was important. They nailed that, and this was also big in launching those two's careers as well.
Yeah, this was a very good slingshot. They were already established, or to some degree, they had already been doing things, but this definitely kind of put them a little bit more in the forefront in their years.
Okay. Also, another fun one is, I guess Jennifer Lawrence. This is probably like right around the same time as Hunger Games, so she was already pretty big, but good fit for Mystique. And the fact it tripped me up a little bit to realize that was Beast we were looking at for most of the movie, because he became blue and furry through his own experiments.
Yeah, that was another one of my points where I was kind of leery.
Because in the comics,
I'm still a little off-put by that.
In the comics, was he always blue and furry?
Blue and furry, but so the whole thing about mutation is that it's progressive. Person's own version of progressive. For example, Ross, she's always been a telepath, but then she almost got it's almost like adolescence where you get a jump in, hormones, and then a big change happens. Mutation works the same way. So Emma Frost, her main mutation was telepathy, but then she got another boost of mutant hormones, and then she got the diamond body. That was a subsequent mutation. He's always been agile and big and intelligent, but then the secondary mutation was that he turned blue and furry.
Okay, and this it was kind of
It
artificial.
was never really an accident.
Yeah. And actually, I know people were not happy about the Emma Frost handling either. I don't know much about that character, but I guess she's supposed to be a lot more smart and hands-on than she comes off in this.
Yes.
People weren't fond of her actress either.
Oh.
Apparently she's
This is
from
the
Mad
one
Men.
thing that I do agree with the public on this one is Emma Frost was portrayed properly. One, she shouldn't have been in the movie because she actually gets introduced after.
She's supposed to be a modern-day character, right?
Yes. And so the fact that she kind of was introduced in a prequel, younger version of X-Men was very
And
strange
they
to me.
confirm in Days of Future Past that she's dead.
Okay. So we're not even following the same rules that you introduced me to. That's fine. But Emma Frost, one, is supposed to be British.
Okay, yeah, didn't do that.
Always had a British accent. It is very, even if I can read a comic book and tell that the character has an accent, and then you put her on screen, you better believe she has an accent.
Yeah, they didn't even bother with that.
With that, Emma Frost has always been she has always had a very dark quality of a personality to her.
And isn't she someone who can like switch allegiances in the comics?
Yes. She's very Mystique.
Okay.
But with she's a blonde and British accent.
Because I think I read that she was a supporting character in the Wolverine, the X-Men cartoon, and I think they mainly went for her as an ally in that, which kind of threw me off because I hadn't heard of her until this movie.
Whenever you hear about Emma Frost, she's always had a backstory of, I used to be evil, but now I'm good. Please trust me. That's always her MO.
Kind of like Catwoman in that regard.
She's Mystique. She's Catwoman. She followed the footsteps. She's the modern day Magneto.
Okay. But other stuff, I feel like there's more to talk about First Class besides Emma Frost.
True.
I like the fact that you have Kevin Bacon as the villain, because I tend to like him. There's another much lesser known movie. Did you ever see the movie Super?
Yes, I did.
You did? Yeah. So that's a crazy, fucked up, dark comedy, which was even weird that it was done by James Gunn, who's now been doing Guardians of the Galaxy. And Kevin Bacon is like the villain, is a drug lord who kidnaps Dwight from The Office, his girlfriend.
Right.
And he is so skeezy in both this and First Class. Like he's good at that.
Yeah, I mean, I did like, even though it's supposed to be kind of a very big guy, supposed to actually physically be big.
Oh, no, he was not that.
Oh, Kevin Bacon is not a very...
No, he's a regular-sized dude.
Yeah, he's
Maybe
pretty
a little
regular.
smaller.
But, I did like him as Shaw. It was just, this is
Another
the
change.
one miss of the mark where typically the X-Men casting looks very similar to the comics, and this is the one where it was just like, no, you missed that one, but I'll take it.
Well, would you say January Jones looks the part of Emma Frost? Who's just everything else that she messed up?
She looks like Emma Frost.
Okay.
She just doesn't sound or act like Emma Frost.
Okay, there you go. But I think one of the reasons I like this one a lot is you would think that what they were saying, this is the first and prequel thing. It kind of does do a good job of feeling pretty self-contained story-wise. Pretty good, pretty solid 3-act structure set up, and the end is being the turning point for the fractured alliances, and you finally get your explanation of why Xavier's in a wheelchair and where the helmet came from, like little cute touches like that. But
the first movie that I got a little irritated with the mutant cameos.
How'd you feel about Wolverine's in this? Because I laughed.
That was fine. I was okay with that. It was fitting. It full to what happens afterwards in future movies.
Hey, Tyrone, I gotta admit,
Sir.
there have been a lot of you ducking in and out. Can we try Skype again?
We'll try Skype.
Okay.
I'm convinced at this point it must be something on my end, but I have to research what. Maybe it's how much stuff I have open. But anything else you would like to say about First Class?
So just where I was going, just really quick, the First Class was the first movie that I really did not care about the mutants that they introduced.
Yeah, well, they throw a lot of them at you.
Yeah, and most of them, as an X-Men fan, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Like Darwin and Angel and all of these. The only person that is actually a X-Men were Beast and Havoc.
I guess, yeah. Oh, and did you notice that the only one of the new ones to die early for no reason was the black guy?
Yes.
Come on.
Which still, and not only it was equal, is doubly bad that it was the black guy.
Yes.
But then it also didn't make sense how he died.
Well, I think it's because he would adapt to matter he was touching. So Sebastian Shaw put like a molten bomb thing in there to make him. Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah. So essentially, he
gets to use his powers like once, where he's just showing it off at a party. I'm like, come on, guys, it's 2011. Do that to one white guys. But
exactly.
But I do think it's kind of funny. We're kind of on opposite ends of this movie's of overall opinions, because this is one of my favorites. Certainly, actually, no, I guess not my favorite outside the main ones, because we're saving that for last.
I did like it. However, it was just was not my favorite.
That's fair. I would recommend it, though, especially. Oh, and I remember somebody pointing out this kind of creates a plot hole, a contradiction about the beginning of X3. Do you know what I'm talking about? The opening to X3 is Charles and Eric going to see young Jean Grey, but it's like 20 years before, so it's still they're old enough to be Stuart and Xavier's walking.
Right, and Xavier's walking. Now, backstory on that. I will actually throw a loophole into people's loopholes.
I think I might know what yours is, but go for it.
So, and this is going into the next movie, I believe, where Charles Xavier can walk, but it does sacrifice his mental abilities.
Okay, yeah. I thought you were going to talk about time travel, because we'll get to the end of Days of Future Past. But,
right. That is something that does carry over in the comics as well.
No, it's more that it's insinuating they didn't sever their ties until much later, when the end of First Class makes it clear that's when Eric went a separate way.
So
they did kind of but it's such a minor scene that I don't mind it that much.
Yeah.
So okay, actually the next one. Well, I think we're going to skip to the next one because it's the only one neither of us have seen, which is the Wolverine.
Yeah.
And you can kind of say there's a Wolverine
honestly, it didn't matter.
You can kind of say there's a Wolverine trilogy at this point, and you could also say that by all accounts, it got better as it went along.
Yeah.
Because I heard this one was generally, people thought it was decent, not the best, but not a big step up from what people didn't like about the first. And I think it adapted a pretty well-known storyline of Wolverine doing stuff in Japan.
It was neither here nor there. It didn't really do anything for the continuation of any X-Men plot. It was just, here, let's make more toys.
It always sounded a little inessential to me, even compared to the first Wolverine movie that wasn't as good.
Yeah.
And now let's get into what I think you were talking about, another most popular one, which is the second of the prequel series, Days of Future Past.
Loved it.
Okay, this is where I'm going to get some hate. I did not care for most of this one.
Okay, I want to hear why.
I feel kind of bad about this. And I guess it's just become a matter of personal taste. I feel like almost 2/3 of the movie feels like setup for everything that goes down at the end, rather than trying to be an interesting progression on its own. Because I'd say once you get to the point where, because history is rewritten at several points in this, because we get time travel, which I guess the idea of Mystique exposing mutants and stuff early when she breaks out of that office, and from that point up till the climax, I feel like it's more just everybody biding their time and setting stuff up for Magneto's big rampage at the end. And obviously most people did not feel this way and felt interested in what was going on. For me, it just felt like a back and forth arguing to that point, and that kind of brought things down as a whole. Yeah, I know I'm alone here. I don't think it's a bad movie. I saw it in theaters and I thought it was decent, but I felt like after how much I got on First Class, this gave me a little less, or quite a bit less. But please don't hate me for that, because I know this is one of the most beloved. Critically.
I had one small problem with Days of Future Past, and is where most fans of X-Men had a problem with Days of Future Past. Kitty cannot do anything with time travel.
Yeah. Was it originally Rogue?
No. I mean, it was always written as Kitty, but then the Rogue cut,
I've heard that.
kind of... So what happens is Kitty's holding on and sending Logan back for such a long period of time. It's exhausting her. And so they need someone else to fill in while she...
Yeah, I was reading about this because Rogue was cut out of the theatrical version, which I'm sure pissed people off.
It just, I understand why she was cut. It was a little bit
too much,
unneeded. It was just not needed. It wasn't. It was liked. It was preferred, but it wasn't needed.
Yeah,
and so it became its own cut that just ended up being maybe 10 minutes longer. So it just lengthened the movie for no reason.
I actually did hear that, there was one major change made to this story's conceit, which is that I think in the original, is it Kitty who time travels like herself to the past?
Yes.
And in this, instead, they had the idea of her putting Logan's consciousness in his past body, because if they were going that approach, Kitty was not born in the 60s. And I think, they wanted to have Wolverine front and center, and the idea of him meeting up with the prequel cast, especially since, he had not visibly aged in those 40 years, that was probably like an obvious choice for them.
That I was totally fine with. My problem was Kitty cannot time travel, and the movie introduced a time-traveling mutant and did not time travel him.
Which one?
Bishop. The black guy with dreads that has the big gun. His whole thing is time travel.
Which movie was he first in?
He was in Days of Future Past. He was in the future scenes where he has the big gun and the black guy.
Yeah, I don't even remember him. That's odd.
He says, Sunspot, give me some power. Sunspot gives him some flames, and he charges his gun and he shoots the Sentinels.
Okay.
His whole character in the comics and the cartoons, he time travels.
Huh.
But you introduced a time-traveling mutant to the movies and did not time travel him.
Yeah.
While giving a character who doesn't time travel and gives her the ability to time travel.
It's like, she can do this now. And I would say, normally maybe I would think because his actor wasn't as well known as Ellen Page, but she's still barely in the movie as a whole. So yeah, why not go with the guy who can do that?
That just kind of really...
That is strange.
Took me out of the movie for the whole first scene.
I find this really funny. So Peter Dinklage is in this as, what was it, Trask? That's his name? The guy who created the Sentinels program. Apparently, that character was in Last Stand.
Yes.
He's that older black guy, I think Bill Duke is the actor's name, who's talking to the president through certain scenes. They called him Trask at one point, and I'm like, that's a bit of a character change.
Well, I believe it was more like a William Stryker scenario that had the name Stryker passed down over generations. So I think this Trask was a father or something of Trask.
The other one could be a descendant, I guess.
Yes.
Because, he wasn't quite old enough to be Trask's age in the 2000s.
I think that's what happens. Now,
that's the only way it makes sense.
Yeah. Because Stryker and Trask are both prominent government names in the X-Men story plot.
Yeah.
And so the name does pass down over generations.
Okay. And I will say the end of it is pretty interesting, and it's, I guess you call it cheap, but the fact that the very end means that the events of this retconned a lot of stuff people hated away.
This was the reset button.
This was basically to say, we can select at this point which elements of 1 through 3 we want to actually keep, because now Jean and Scott are alive. How? What changed? Doesn't matter, but I guess the idea is that the whole Phoenix stuff never happened.
Right.
Now it's going to happen in one of the prequel movies.
Correct.
So you can assume she'll probably survive.
And typically, because Days of Future Past does come up in the comics often, and it is always a reset button.
So we're true to that. And I love the fact that they're willing to get Kelsey Grammer back.
Its purpose in the movies, the same purpose it serves in the comic books.
Also, it's a cute touch. They were willing to get Kelsey Grammer back in the makeup, even just for one line.
That's right.
I think they said that was a last minute thing because people were so fond. Even people who hated Last Stand said Beast was one of the best things about it, and Grammer enjoyed doing it.
You gotta love reoccurring roles.
Yeah, well, also the fact that Beast was still a central character in this in First Class, so you might as well show his present self.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else you want to say about it?
Let's see. I think that was it. The one thing that I did absolutely love was the progression of the Sentinels, because the technology of the Sentinels did progress as the mutant generations progressed as well.
The ones they're showing the post-Back to the Future are way more efficient than what you're seeing in the 70s.
It was so great. It was such a cool thing to kind of see how these mutant hunting robots became the scary, terrifying Sentinels that the older generation runs away from.
They became Skynet and Terminators, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I guess the idea is that they go crazy and start killing all organic life. Oops.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 2 movies left. I'm going to mention, because I talked to you about for the listeners, I had brought up, did you want to cover Deadpool? But because I also saw and enjoyed, but that's such both a different, unique beast, and I think you can consider it a spin-off. Because I was confused for a while, if it's even canon, because we all know about how Wade Wilson was dealt with in X-Men Origins, but apparently the excuse is that you can say that this reworked thing is another effect of the time stream being changed, and that's how you can excuse this. The first Wade Wilson literally was not a thing anymore.
Right.
So
the one thing that I will say that kind of continues the story plot, continues the conversation on X-Men along, is that this the rendition of Colossus in Deadpool was the best rendition of Colossus in any of the X-Men movies.
Even visually, he was built more like the comic version. Just a bigger guy. He got the accent.
He was Russian.
Yeah, because I can't remember if he had a line in 3. He was so.
He did.
He was so minuscule in that.
He did actually speak, and he was actually Russian, and it was such a nice thing to hear. It was almost like we were talking about with Emma Frost. You can't introduce a Russian character and not make him Russian.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get more chance to talk about Deadpool eventually, especially with the sequel coming out next year.
Yeah.
But we got 2 left. So here's another one I think you have seen, but I haven't. What is your take on Apocalypse?
Apocalypse, of course, had its issues with certain things.
I feel like this has been the most poorly received of the prequel movies.
Yeah, and I think that will always happen when you have... Apocalypse was such a big bad of the X-Men saga franchise.
Yeah, I think some people thought it didn't do him justice.
It did not. It didn't do the actual character of Apocalypse injustice.
And that's a shame, because Oscar Isaac is a good actor.
Yeah, I mean... But the thing is Apocalypse in the cartoons and the comic books, he's huge.
Aren't there scenes where he grows giant in this, though? But I guess he's supposed to be perpetually huge.
There was one scene.
Okay, yeah.
There was one scene, and
they might have figured it was too much more trouble than it was worth to keep.
I think it was a little bit too expensive.
Yeah, that's probably it.
To make that happen. But also, the character of Apocalypse, and I'm sure you can find this meme anywhere, is that he looks like Ivan Ooze.
I was about to say that, yes, because we've touched on Power Rangers in the past, and I watched the VHS of Power Rangers movie to death, and I thought that was so funny, because that is not how he looks in the comics, apparently.
No, not at all. Now, he still looks goofy in the comics.
Right, most of them do, but it's a comic, you let it slide.
But, I mean, it's a comic book, right? So, it was a little too off-putting and reminiscent of something else for him to have his own identity.
Yeah, and not the most highly regarded thing either.
No, not at all.
Do you know who played Ivan Ooze?
Yes, I do.
Isn't it weird?
I think a lot of things are weird when it comes to actors, really. But,
I mean, the villain from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And he's also in Hot Fuzz as the priest. He's a character actor, this British character actor who's just been popping up in things on stage and film for years. So,
I mean, I can say the same thing about Robert Downing Jr. playing a white guy pretending to be a black guy, but...
Dude pretending to be a dude, pretending to be another dude. I've never I've never heard it, but I know there's a line in that where he says he doesn't break character until he's done with the DVD commentary, and the movie's DVD has a commentary of him still in that character.
I did not. I need to find that then.
That's pretty cool. Awesome. Especially because when you get the moments of him being himself, he's kind of doing like a Russell Crowe impression. But anyway, what are some other things you'd like to say about Apocalypse, like outside of the character Apocalypse himself, like your issues or your positives?
One of my big issues. So Apocalypse, in theory, is supposed to be the first mutant, which they did hold true to that in this thing here. Recently in the comic books, they've been saying Namor, which is almost like the Marvel version of Aquaman, is the first mutant. So I'm kind of confused as to why Marvel is, it's kind of reneging on its own lore.
Don't know.
But I really liked how the story played out. There was one thing I'm trying to remember. There was one thing that really kind of took me out of the movie.
I know one thing I've heard about that because I read some synopsis. One thing, subplot that sounded interesting to me is how you kind of almost get a redemption for Magneto, and then Mankind fucks it up. Because the idea is he goes into hiding and starts a family and a normal job, and then the army kills that family, and he starts his agenda right back up.
Yep.
That's a cool idea, I think, because it's also showing the shades of gray in Magneto that maybe he is a character possible of redemption and not 100% clear-cut evil. And he wouldn't have been evil if Mankind hadn't mistreated mutants.
One thing that is just my own personal pet peeve, I know that someone else may disagree, and that's fine. As I said before, Angel is not one of my favorite X-Men characters.
Did they bring him back in this somehow?
Yeah, because now I know why they did it. I have every knowledge as to why they did it. Angel has always been one of the Horsemen of Apocalypse.
Okay, yeah, because they do the Horsemen in this, right?
Yep. Angel has always been a Horseman of the Apocalypse. How did they
explain him existing in the 80s when he was like a teen in the 2000s?
That is my frustration.
They don't explain it?
No.
Is it supposed to be the same character?
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
They could have just decided there could be more than one, person with the name of Angel, but that's lazy.
That was kind of my frustration. It was like, this person that exists in was it the 80s? It was before the 80s.
Apocalypse takes place in 83, apparently. And Last Stand is 2006. He's already like a young teen, so he could not have been born.
Exactly.
It would have been an infant at best. That's weird.
That was my weird thing about that. I love Mohawk Storm.
Oh, yeah. I did hear about that, and I think that's cool because they acknowledge that very radically different design she's had at certain points.
Yep. I love that, they actually gave Storm her backstory of being in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted more Psylocke.
How'd you feel about her in this? Because I don't
felt
know how people
very blah.
Oh.
Very blah.
And is she a character you typically like in other media?
She is a badass.
Oh, it's a shame.
Yeah. There are a couple of in-house psychics that X-Men revolves around, and it's Jean Grey, Emma Frost, and Psylocke.
So she's in the same kind of type of powers as them, from what I understand?
Yeah, the only thing is that Psylocke actually has projectile capabilities.
So she's kind of like Scarlet Witch.
Yes.
Okay. I'm guessing those two have worked together in the comics at some point.
So think of Psylocke as a little bit of a lesser version of Jean Grey. She's got telepathic capabilities. She's got telekinetic capabilities. And she kind of makes this psionic weapon because. Yeah, I'm actually looking at the cast. It looks like one cool feature of this is that you get a lot more of, because it's later on, you get a lot more younger versions of the old cast, like Raven, Beast, but you get Storm, you get Jean, you get Cyclops. That's kind of cool. Oh, you finally get Jubilee. I didn't know that. I was about to say, you do get Jubilee. That was one thing that I have been itching for.
Yeah, she was the Rogue equivalent in the old cartoon, right? Like the show started with her being introduced to all of this. So it felt odd they would leave her out for so long.
I felt like the movies never knew what to do with her. Mm-hmm. But she's always had the young apprentice role.
How'd you feel about her in this movie?
She still didn't make as much of a splash as she should have.
That's a shame.
Like, she's still an Easter egg.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, maybe they don't know what to do with her. Anything else do you want to say about Apocalypse? Like, maybe some stuff you do like about it?
Let's see. I loved the story plot. I loved how the story progressed.
Okay.
The one thing that they didn't add in was whenever Apocalypse always comes up, it's always some kind of time travel-y
vortex
thingy that happens.
The way Thanos comes out in the trailer.
Yeah. I was still okay with. I liked that, we left the time traveling alone. We already had a whole movie about time traveling.
Yeah, I feel like any more would be too much.
It would have been too much. So, I like the movie as a whole. Again, it just played more into the whole tropes of you've got all of these really well-established characters that you're
not using right.
Not using correctly.
So you would sum this up as a good core plot, but a lot of mishandling of some great characters.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I would probably see it eventually.
It's not so much a lot of mishandling, it's just enough for a fan to notice.
Enough to bother fans.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready to move on to our last one? This one's very fresh in my mind.
Last and not least.
Absolutely not least. I'm going to say it right now, Logan might be, at worst, tied with X2 and 3 as the ones I enjoyed the most. Definitely the most unique outside of Deadpool. They took a gamble with this.
Okay.
Okay, well, how did you liked it, I guess?
Well, okay, I love Logan. And again, like, I loved all of the X-Men movies except for Wolverine: The Origin.
Yeah.
Both of the previous Wolverine movies, like, throw those ones. I could care less about those.
Yeah, that seemed to be a lot of people's thoughts on them. This one kind of was making up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a really well done, hey guys, we're sorry. Here's the Wolverine that you know.
Not just that, here is something very unique. The approach, the tone, the plot structure of this is so different. It is smaller scale, it is personal, and it is brutal.
It is very brutal.
And sad. The fact that this takes place so long after and you realize everybody but like 2 characters are dead.
Yep.
And it gets even worse when you find out how they died.
It was very minimalist, like you said. Like,
yeah,
the cast was maybe like a total of 10 people.
If you're talking main characters, less.
Less than you can count the main characters on one hand.
Yep.
I think for me, they didn't set up enough to care, for me to care about.
Are you talking about the entire cast or even the main ones?
I'm just talking about the story of the film in general.
I think it helps, at least for Wolverine and Xavier, if you've watched the last movies, because seeing where they've fallen is
you
sad.
had to. This is one of those movies where you kind of needed to see the previous movies to understand the gravity of what's happening.
I think you could still show it to. You could still be, for a lot of people, this could still be their first X-Men movie, and they'd still like it. But they'll get even more emotion out of it if they sunk time into getting to know Logan and Xavier.
Absolutely.
And just what a tragic, I mean, we're going spoilers, what a tragic end to both their stories this is, even though it ends on a note of hope for newer characters.
Yeah.
But just the premise is, like, you realize mutants have stopped being born. The X-Men are dead except for these 2.
Yeah.
And, man, Charles in this movie, it alternates between being like that warm figure, even more warm, and then just the saddest and even most dangerous thing. Because the fact that you've got like one of the most powerful psychics on Earth now with dementia and seizures, and when it happens, it's horrific. And
it was really nice to see old man Logan.
Yeah. Oh, even Logan too. Like, obviously he's not senile, but it establishes he is finally, even with his extended aging and healing, he's reaching the end of his own natural lifespan, and he's in a pretty shitty point in life, work-wise, emotion-wise.
Because it almost seemed like Logan was never going to die.
You might as well think that in those last couple of movies, but then this is a point where it's like, no, this is... And I think this also ties into why Hugh Jackman was ready to move on, because he was getting older too. Like, I think he is... I'm pulling his page up right now. He's 49. Yeah, he's not quite as... He's still a handsome, buff fella, but he's not quite as young as he was in 2000.
And do you know why he had to kind of step back from his acting career?
No, what happened?
If I remember correctly, and you have his page up so you can tell me better. I believe it was because he had to go through some therapy for some kind of cancer.
Oh no. Hang on, I'll try searching his page. In 2013 and 2014 he has had some skin cancer scares. I'm trying to see if there's been anything said about it lately. This was 3 years ago though.
It was very much a surprise to fans.
Yeah,
when
I'll bet.
It was when Logan was announced and Hugh Jackman was standing there in the image. It was like, yes, we got one more in him.
And that's what they hyped it up as too. Like, not just the fact that that it was an end to Logan's movie story, but that I think the phrase I kept hearing was, after this, he's hanging up the claws.
Yeah.
Like, even he was like, it's time for me to move on unless something very special happens. Like, I think he's, like he said, if you do something with Disney in the MCU, he's up for it, but otherwise, and actually, I am looking right here. They did some effects to age him up more, both makeup and CG.
No, he does look good. He does look good for his age.
In real life, he looks a lot better than he does in this movie. Like,
yes.
I mean, the second half of this movie is basically about wearing Logan down even more than he already was when it started. Not just the fact that his healing has slowed and that he's older, but they just put him through the ringer in this. This is such a brutal movie. This is the first one other than Deadpool to be rated, like an actual X-Men movie, to be rated R, and they take full advantage of it. There are parts that are just brutal and terrifying and sad. Like, halfway through the movie when, you get a little bit of leverage when they meet that farm family, I still in the back of my head was like, this isn't going to end well for anyone, and holy shit, does it not. Especially the saddest part when the dad's last moment, when because they introduced not just X-23 with Laura, but X-24, like this feral clone of Logan himself. And the dad runs over him and then gets out, shoots him a bunch of times, tries to shoot Logan himself, but realizes he's out of bullets, and only then plops down dead. Like, he died angry at Logan. And just shit, man. And just showing, like, if you thought, like, the military activity in this was brutal, in the older movies was brutal, this is basically the premise that a bunch of agents who are viewing children as just guinea pigs.
Well, so to that light, in the past, the government was almost scared to take one side or the other because mutants were everywhere.
And now in a world where they're almost
2 to 1, and now there's so few. It's like, well, we're going to do what we want. Y'all got to go.
But of course, you find out that Dr. engineered and spread a virus, which is why it happened. And the fact that now these kids are okay at the end gives you hope that maybe they could, grow up and breed new mutants or something. But it's still a major step back for mutants. Oh, and also the fact that the X-Men were all killed by Charles Seizure. Holy shit. So brutal. And but also, not going back to the R rating, like, I had heard complaints for so long, like, you need to show how violent Wolverine's actions are. Like, no, there's been no blood and gore. It's just been him slashing, people falling down. The first scene when, like, carjackers and arms are coming off, faces are being scarred, guts, blood, beheadings, decapitations, and like disemboweled, and just the limbs. It's so effective, and the fact that they save it for specific moments. And I mean, I want to talk about Laura herself. I had heard a lot of praise for Daphne Keane, I believe is her name. Yeah, it is. This is her first big role, and how effective she is, because she doesn't really get to talk or emote much for the first half of the movie. She's just this feral child who is either being just, I found her creepy most of the time, and then the part where she lets loose, like the first time you see what she's fully capable of, and you're just like, oh my god. And then, I love the fact that, once it's her and Logan on their own, and she finally starts talking, he's like, you could talk this whole fucking time. And also the fact that maybe it wasn't intentional, but I thought her speaking voice at first is adorable when she gets all excited, like, see, Eden, Logan, see, go here. And then, of course, she mellows out, and this girl gets to show her chops as a more nuanced character. And I definitely see why they chose this girl, because she's already got that kind of talent for that kind of multi-layered character, and they are very much toying with the idea of spin-offs as she and the character grow.
She definitely... the actress definitely embodied really well the character and the idea of X-23.
Well, isn't in the comics X-23 is generally seen as like a young woman?
She definitely grew up to be that way, but
they had points when she was a kid.
She was kind of introduced in, I would say, her mid-teens, and then now she's in her late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, well, this is like she's like at most 10. This kid.
Yeah, like she's definitely a child at
there are
this
moments
point.
where you can tell.
But X-23 has always been this animalistic, feral person, but she's still a girl. Yeah, like she has moments where it's just like, I just want a barrette in my hair.
Yeah, and this touches on that. They're like,
it
parts
does.
Wants to wear clothes and sunglasses and stuff.
Good.
And a lot of it is like so much of this is her first exposure to life outside of this lab.
Yeah.
And her having to, and like Logan had to teach her consequences and rules about things.
Yep.
And like I said, it said a lot that for so much of this movie, I was just being creeped out or annoyed by her along with Logan. But then, when she starts talking, you care for her.
Absolutely.
And of course, I'm not going to say I shed a tear at the end, but it's effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of knew there was only one way this could end for Logan himself, since they were saying this is the last ride, but still, it hurt.
The only thing that I really wished that I had from X-23 was just 2% less screaming and 2% more talking.
Yeah, I wish he had talked more early on, but they still did a job of selling her selling her real self on me once she did start talking. But I feel like they could have done it a little earlier, like maybe when they're at the farm or something. Because you're still getting glimmers of her humanity, like her wanting to listen to the music and stuff. And still, like, Logan is still so pissed off at her, like, even when she first starts talking, like, stop talking about this map, stop it.
Right.
Oh, and also the fact that this movie gets a little meta. The fact that X-Men comics and action figures exist in this, but Logan touches on the fact that there's greatly distorted versions of the truth. Closest thing other Marvel movies get is the fact that you noticed in the first Captain America, they're showing the punching Hitler comic. Because that was the character's conception as World War II propaganda in real life. And I love the fact that they tied that into to make his existence a little more plausible of the persona. But Logan, this is more of a cynical thing about it, of Logan saying these stories are romanticized and not showing you the really horrible side of things. That ties into the story's themes of just showing both the best and worst of humanity in the world of X-Men in a world where most mutants are no longer a thing.
Yep.
And I could see it not being everybody's cup of tea if you're used to the format of the other movies. But me, I like some of my favorite superhero movies are stuff like the Nolan Batman movies and Winter Soldier, where things get more raw and intense and even scary, because that increases my investment. And that is the same case for Logan. But is there anything else you want to say about Logan?
It was a nice way to say farewell to the character, and
to Xavier too.
Xavier. We'll see a lot more of Xavier.
Yeah, but this could be Stewart's last time doing it. I mean, I don't know if he said that, but he's getting old, so
it's possible.
Right, not as confirmed as. And I do hope that Jackman does not come back, because it would be hard to top this one. This is one of the best in the series, and kind of, as much shit as we could give Fox for stuff like Fantastic Four, the fact that they made this and Deadpool showed that I feel like they might be more willing to take risks than the Disney MCU.
See, I think what the thing is Fox does a lot better of a job if you don't put them in a PG-13 or PG-13 box and let them kind of let loose. Because even right now with their show The Gifted, I'll even take it a step further beyond the movies and talk about what's happening now. With the show The Gifted, it's not bad.
Okay.
I'm actually kind of thoroughly enjoying it. And they're letting loose. They're talking about, you know, it's got a lot more of that raw aspect that Logan had, and a lot more of that fear factor element. And if they're forcing you to care about the characters, but in a much different way than what Disney does.
Mm-hmm. And it's a both different approach from the MCU and from previous X-Men movies. And you could also say the same thing for Deadpool, even though that's the polar opposite in terms of tone. So I think it's cool that, you know, and I understand Deadpool took a lot of impetus from Ryan Reynolds and others to happen. There was still a lot of activities. Yes. Nobody will like this. Joke's on you guys.
Right.
And maybe that... No, I feel like Logan would have had to have entered production by the time Deadpool was out. But maybe they saw rough cuts of Deadpool and realized R-rated stuff could still draw a huge audience. And actually, just one funny thing I wanted to say, touching on the director of Logan. I'm looking up his filmography right now. Is named James Mangold. Because I knew he did one of my favorite movies of like a decade ago. Did you ever see the 3:10 to Yuma remake with Christian Bale and Russell Crowe?
I did not.
It's fantastic. And something I'd say about both this and 3:10, he is great when it comes to the last big like climax, both the tension and when it all is let loose. Because the end of this movie is goddamn amazing. Same goes for 3:10. But I'm also looking at, he actually did direct The Wolverine, and the difference between it and Logan being that he helped write Logan and not The Wolverine. He also did Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash movie. Okay, here's the crazy one. He wrote Oliver and Company.
Huh.
That's night and day in terms of your audience.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. Though that does have one of the more brutal Disney villain deaths. I will give it that. So that is, you know, for the most part, because we skipped the Wolverine and Deadpool, but that is all the X-Men movies. And
all of your X-Men movies.
I'm going to ask you now, would you be able to say if you have an individual favorite among them, or even like 2 or 3?
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, I put you on the spot. I will say I'd probably lump in X2, Last Stand, sorry people hate that, First Class, and Logan.
I don't have a favorite. I can't say that I have a favorite.
Would you say Origins Wolverine is your least favorite?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll at least go that far. And
well, probably whatever the second one, the Japan one.
Yeah.
Oh wait,
Wolverine.
The Japan one, because I literally fell asleep on it every time I tried to watch it. Yeah, that's why
you could barely say anything about it. You can't get.
Yeah. I at least got through Origins, but it was just not great.
Yeah.
So whichever one the Japan one was, then Origins, and then
Apocalypse or First Class.
No, I still liked Apocalypse.
Okay, well,
I just had my issues
First
with
Class
Apocalypse.
Or the first movie, or
probably First Class. That's with Emma Frost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, First Class was definitely at one of my bottoms of.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting how we differ, because that's one of my favorites, and then I'd say the ones I've seen in their entirety, Days of Future Past is probably my least favorite, and that is not a common opinion. But you know, that's how people's opinions work. And
I think the biggest thing for me was that First Class was almost the least like an X-Men movie.
No, that's Logan. But I guess the fact that First Class was still, you know, you could tell it was still intentioned as a traditional X-Men movie.
Yeah, like I was still, like, the intent was for it to still be an X-Men movie. Like, Logan was Logan. That was not X-Men.
That was almost an experiment, basically.
Yeah. That was another
That's what I'm saying was so bold about it in Deadpool. You don't usually see big studios do that big a deviation. But I guess we can wrap things up. But again, it's been a pleasure talking with you one-on-one for this. Another super long episode that I might cut into 2 chunks.
That's absolutely fine.
That's just how we roll sometimes. But I think I hope fans of the X-Men movies, in particular, enjoy this episode. I know, obviously, I'm sure we'll have some people disagree with our opinion on certain movies, but just keep in mind it's all relative. That's always relative.
We're all the internet about it.
Yeah, well. And I will say, again, so also besides, we mentioned Elements of Light, and what is the name of the film festival again?
Soul for Real Film Festival.
And where can people find you on like social media, like Twitter and the like?
You can search me as Tyrone Selby on Facebook, and you can also find me on Twitter, Tyrone Hydraulic.
Sweet. As for myself, you can find me on my username Behonkiss, BEHONKISS, on pretty much anything that I use. YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, DeviantArt, and some other stuff I don't use very often. But so you can look up there for videos, cartoons, animations. And again, I also upload each episode of the podcast to my YouTube account as well, if you prefer to listen through that. I'm trying to make those uploads the same day or the day after of the feed upload. Though if you want to get it first, I still recommend subscribing to us through iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcast application or site you use. And I will say I announced it previously on other episodes in our social media page, because you can find Sketch Watch Play on Twitter and Facebook under that account name, one word, Sketch Watch Play. Our next episode will be a first-time guest. We've brought up the podcast Generation Animation many times in the past and have had Felipe and Tyler guest star. And we will have another first-time appearance from their co-hosts, one Mark Gonzalez, as we will be doing, another retrospective, and one that's going to have plenty to talk about. We will talk all things Final Fantasy. And I'm very curious to see what type of things we will be focusing on, because that gives a lot of different things to talk about. But again, Tyrone, thanks so much for joining me on this.
Thank you for having me.
And for putting up with all the usual Discord and Skype issues. I'm definitely going to need to try and figure that out by the time I talk to Mark. But thank you, people, for listening. I am John Fleury.
And I'm Tyrone Selby.
And what's a good X-Men farewell tagline? Is there such a thing?
To me, my X-Men.
Yeah, that's a good one. For some reason, I thought of the first thing to come to mind was that picture of Wolverine doing the middle finger claw. But I can probably just make that the episode thumbnail.
Or we can exit on a bamf, because that's the sound that Nightcrawler makes when he disappears.
He makes a badass motherfucker. That's what McCree's belt says in Overwatch.
That makes sense.
It took me a while. I only learned what that acronym is by looking up, like, is that another version of MILF? Why would you be wearing that, McCree? Oh, no, it's because it sums him up.